Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Nutrition Essentials, a spin-off of our popular Health Essentials podcast. I'm John Horton, your host. What do you see when you look at an apple? For most of us, the answer is fruit. Maybe it's red-colored fruit, maybe it's green-colored fruit, but it's basically just a piece of fruit that we consider healthy. A registered dietitian, on the other hand, sees a bigger picture. They look at that same apple and see fiber to aid digestion and gut health. They see vitamin C to boost the immune system. They see potassium to help control blood pressure. In their eyes, food is more than just something to eat when you're hungry. It's a nutritional opportunity to better your body. So today, we're going to go inside the mind of a registered dietitian to learn more about what they do and how they think. And we've got the perfect candidate for this educational exploration, Julia Zumpano, our resident dietitian on the podcast. Julia has been with Nutrition Essentials since day one to unlock the secrets of food so that you can be the best version of yourself. It's what she has been doing at Cleveland Clinic every day for more than 20 years. It's safe to say she feels strongly about the connection between diet and health. She's got quite a story too. So let's get to know a little more about Julia, as well as what she does on the job. Well, Julia, I have to say, it almost seems odd to say welcome to the podcast, but I guess welcome to the podcast. You are our guest today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I guess to kind of get things started, we're here to talk about, just being a registered dietitian and everything that kind of goes with that. But let's start with a little bit of kind of getting to know you a bit. And there's no better way to do that than with just what did you have for breakfast today? I want to know kind of what a dietitian uses to get going in the morning.
Well, it's a great question. I typically, and this is not an answer that I think most people would think that I would say, but I typically skip breakfast.
What?
It's
the most important meal of the day.
Well, it is. It isn't for some, and for others, I think, we can incorporate that meal later into the day. I do love breakfast. It's one of my favorite meals to prepare and eat, especially on a Saturday morning with my family. But day to day, I generally start my day off with a workout. So I do better when I'm working out fasted. So I do follow an eating window most days and start my meal off usually around 11. So late morning, I'll start off with
breakfast. Yeah.
A late breakfast, getting a workout in and kind of getting situated for the day. And then I'll kind of settle down to have something.
All right. Well, what did you have at 11?
So I usually start off, today I made some baked oatmeal. So I usually bake it in the oven and throw as much as I can hide in there for my kids and myself. So I made baked oatmeal with some ground flax seeds, and I used a couple eggs and some cinnamon, a little maple syrup, mashed some bananas in there, some apples. And sometimes I'll throw a scoop of protein powder, some peanut butter in there, and bake it up, and usually kind of snack on that during the week. And then a couple hours later, I'll have a protein shake. So usually a pretty loaded protein shake. I throw all sorts of things in there. Depending on what I have, I'll throw some frozen veggies in there. Chia or flax seeds, obviously some protein powder. I'll throw beets in there, celery, some spinach or kale. So kind of whatever I have around, I'll load it up there too.
Well, I don't know how it's possible, but you somehow made a bowl of oatmeal sound even healthier than it normally sounds. So I guess that's kind of comes with being a registered dietitian.
Well, this is baked oatmeal, which I would highly recommend. I'm not a huge fan of a bowl of oatmeal.
The mushy stuff.
Yeah. So I'll make it into baked or muffins or overnight oats. I'm a huge fan of too.
All right. Well, obviously, just from the way that you talk about making food and what you eat, you're obviously very passionate about it. So tell us a little bit about how you decided you wanted to become a registered dietitian.
So I always was very interested in healthcare. My mom was sick my whole life, so I kind of was in and out of hospitals with her, kind of recognizing the value of good health as a child. My father struggled with his health. I had two elderly grandparents that lived next door to me. So I went through a lot of health concerns. I was actually one of the only fluently English speaking, family members out of the four of us. So I was definitely as a primary caregiver for my parents as well as my grandparents, and helping them navigate through their health and just keeping well, I guess. And I just learned the value then so early on. And as a child, I always wanted to be a pediatrician. And then as time went on, I realized how much school went into that. And I worked at a little restaurant, and a dietitian worked there in the kitchen. And she told me about what she did and what her training was. And I had actually never even heard of a dietitian. But the second she told me what she did, I was very confident that that's what I wanted to do. That was the path that was
Wow.
mapped out for me.
Oh, that's really cool. Does she know that she was like kind of your inspiration?
You know what? I don't know. I was quite young. I was 15, I think, at the point. So I'm not sure if she even knows I'm a dietitian or.
That's kind of neat how people just enter your life and kind of send you on a certain path.
Absolutely. I mean, just proves that you can influence people just by your words and actions every day. And you may not ever know what influence you had on them.
You just shared a lot about your backstory. You kind of started us there when you're 15 and you're working in this restaurant. You kind of head down this path. What did you do after that to kind of build your credentials and become the, just the fabulous dietitian you are today?
Sure. So I actually started working for the hospital system in the Akron area as a diet tech. So I worked in the kitchen and took food orders. So learned a lot about like the way that the inpatient part of nutrition worked. And I worked there through college as well as several other, service jobs as a server. So I was embedded in the food industry quite a bit, and went to the University of Akron and was a part of their coordinated program. So where you're coordinating your internships and all your schooling. And then that program was quite intense. So I decided to take a break. I went back to the didactic program and then landed an internship at the Cleveland Clinic, which is where I started and where I continue.
Yeah. So it sounds like, there's a very dedicated educational program to become a dietitian, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a 4-year bachelor's degree in science, and then about a 1-year long internship, and then a registration exam and licensure. They've just required, as of 2024, to have a master's degree in nutrition to be able to be a registered dietitian. So it's definitely pretty intense.
Wow. Now, and I thought too, now you have a specialty with your dietitian role too, correct?
I do specialize in preventive cardiology. That's where I've spent most of my career at the Cleveland Clinic. So about 20 years in preventive cardiology.
Wow. It's a great place to be. And I'd imagine there's a lot you can do there to really make a difference for people.
There is. What I've always loved about preventive cardiology is that they've very strongly valued nutrition. So almost every patient that comes through the doors is referred to a dietitian, whether they want to or not. They're just at least encouraged to consider it, or at least be seen at least once in cardiac rehab, which is a part of preventive cardiology. We do phase 2 cardiac rehab. They are required to have at least one visit with a dietitian.
Okay. Well, all you ever hear about is heart healthy diet. It seems like that's constantly a phrase that comes up. But I know that there's a heart specific sort of diets, or like the cardiology ones, but it goes with just about everything in the body, right? There's certain diets that are better for your gut or your lungs or anything really.
Absolutely. There are so many different specialties within the realm of nutrition. So you have gut health, brain health, you have metabolic health, including things like diabetes, prediabetes, obviously heart health and prevention, overall wellness and disease prevention. You have oncology, which is dealing with, cancer patients. So bariatrics, which is dealing with bariatric surgery or medical weight management. So there are so many areas. There's even things like intestinal rehab and IV nutrition, which is what we call parenteral nutrition. So there's so many different areas of nutrition.
And what's amazing, while there's similarities between all those, I mean, they all have slight differences that just make each one unique to what it's working for in your body.
Yeah, they all do have similarities, but then some of them are so vastly different. So if you're, treating a patient with parenteral nutrition, you're really making sure it's a lot of numbers, calculating the exact amount of calories, fat, protein, nutrients this person needs in a formula to provide them their sole form of nutrition. Then when you're counseling patients in maybe an outpatient setting, you really have to look at their lifestyle factors, their economic factors, where they live, what kind of food they have available to them, who they're eating with. There's so many things that influence how you eat and what you eat. And it's not just a matter of you should eat this because it's good for you. It's a matter of how can we incorporate the foods that are available to you, are reasonable for you to consume on a regular basis to enhance your health.
Wow, that's an awful lot to remember. That's why I'm glad I'm usually the one just asking questions here, and I don't have to have all that information, because that's a lot to remember. You've given us a lot on your kind of professional background and kind of your route there. Tell us a little about yourself personally. Your home life. It sounds like you mentioned you had kids. What's your crazy life like there?
Sure. So I have 3 children. They are 13, 10, and 8. So
that is a crazy time. Yeah.
Very crazy. They keep me busy. They're very active. My husband's also very active. We do try to focus on being a very active family. I was a fitness instructor, a group fitness instructor for about 12 years prior to having kids. So fitness has always been a huge secondary hobby to me. I love working out. I love all forms of working out. I've tried them all. I vary throughout them all. I think it's it makes me feel good. I've always craved it ever since, I was young. I started playing soccer in high school. I was a gymnast and swam when I was younger. So I was always been active. My parents always had to keep me moving because otherwise I would drive them crazy. I'm one of those people who have a lot of energy, not necessarily suffer from not enough energy, which is a blessing in most cases. So I'm very active, as I mentioned, very active with my family. And, in the summers, my all-time favorite season, we have a boat. So we tend to go boating a lot in the summer, which I find very relaxing and just wonderful to enjoy, just like what we have in Cleveland, the beautiful lakes we have in Cleveland, and really all around the U.S. We've traveled around with the boat too. So those are the types of things I really enjoy.
I'd imagine with 3 kids, you have had some rather interesting discussions with them as to the value of nutrition and what's good to eat and what's not so good.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, I do a lot of media for the clinic. So, my son's like, oh, my teacher saw you on TV talking about food dyes. And then he's like, oh, I guess I shouldn't be drinking this Gatorade or, whatever, sports drink, not to call out specific names. But, it's interesting because not only do I preach it at home, but, I preach it to the masses and whoever will listen. And it's starting to influence certainly them and then our surroundings as well.
Well, I mean, would you say, do you have like a personal approach to eating? Is there a certain way in which you kind of go about it?
Yeah. I mean, personally or professionally?
Personally, yeah, like you,
Yeah.
when you're setting up your meal plan for the week and when you're scheduling stuff, you go to the grocery store. What's it look like?
Yeah, I try to, really focus on variety. Of course, I'm going to take into play what everybody enjoys because, you're feeding 5 people. If I ate on my own, my menu might look a little differently than, does for the family. But I really focus on balance. So every meal is very balanced. It always has a carbohydrate, a protein, and a vegetable. And usually I serve several vegetables just to be sure we have something someone will like and consume. So that's usually the basis for all my meals. And that's how I plan my meals. So I may even just have all of those things available and I don't necessarily plan each day out, but I may say, okay, well, tonight we're going to have steak, potatoes, and green beans, or, I'm going to roast vegetables, or we're going to do an Asian night. But I usually try to have an inventory of a lot of options. And then based on how my week goes and my evenings go, which, with 3 kids and activities, there's very little
You have
time
tons
to
of
prepare.
time, right? Just
Yeah,
tons of time.
There's very little time to prepare meals some nights. So I kind of base it on the nights we're really busy. We do quick meals, or I double batch what I'm making the night before, so we have leftovers. And then those nights that we have a little bit of more of an opener schedule, I will, take a lot of extra time to do more of a glorified meal.
Yeah. I'm guessing that you have a pretty stocked freezer with
I
things
do.
you can pull out at a moment's notice to bam, instant meal.
I do. I have a lot of I have a good inventory. I think that's always been the key for me, is having a good stock freezer. I have an outside fridge. I'm rotating stock. I have berries in the inside fridge and things that go quick. And then I have things like apples and an extra bag of oranges. And I never want to run out of like fruits, vegetables, or good food. So I always have a stockpile of stuff.
And that's so much of it. I know I've learned this and just working with you on all these podcasts. Healthy eating often comes down to good planning. And we tend to kind of fall to the side, or, kind of go off the rails when we just need something right then and we don't have something sitting in our fridge ready to go. And that's when you order up the pizza or go grab a couple of burgers or do something else like that.
Absolutely. It totally comes with good planning. I mean, everyone's gotten to the point where they're like, oh, I'm starving and I don't know what I'm going to eat for dinner. I don't know what to have a snack. I haven't prepared. And then, you have to choose something from wherever you're at. And usually those choices, those convenient, quick choices, are not ideal. So, one trick I've always done, my kids come home and they're starving when they get off the bus. So I'll put a tray of like fruits and vegetables out. I'll kind of have it, they'll start opening the cupboards and I'm like, nope, go to the fridge. We're not starting with the cupboards. Like whatever you want has to come from the fridge, or I'll start cutting it all up and it doesn't even matter what I put out. They'll devour it because they're starving. So that's a really great time to, harness that hunger and plan ahead, because, when we're searching, we're looking, sometimes it's hard to decipher. Are we hungry? Are we looking for a snack? We're trying to satisfy not only maybe a physical hunger need, but a little bit of an emotional need. Like, I'm finally home. I'm done with this hard day. I just want to relax and eat something that's going to make me feel good. But I think planning ahead a little bit for that will help set the bar of making good decisions, and also just feeling your best in that moment. So getting maybe the energy you're looking for, getting some nutrients that you might need, and then also just feeling good, like digestive wise, of what you ate, and like kind of being able to move on with the rest of your day.
I'm always amazed. You make it sound so easy. And then I go upstairs and I hit the kitchen and I can hear that bag of pretzels calling my name. And is it hard or was it hard for you to kind of get to that point where you just kind of go for that healthy choice as your first choice?
I think that's, I am not necessarily, it can't be compared to the average normal person. I don't think that's fair. I tell my patients that all the time. I tell them I'm nutritionally brainwashed. I'm completely brainwashed. I can't go into the cupboard and grab pretzels without thinking, this is not the healthiest snack. I should have done this, or this doesn't have enough fiber. Like, I'm brainwashed. It's all just programmed in my mind. I've done this for so long. I have so much compassion and value towards it that I think that I can't be compared to just like the everyday Joe. It's not fair to, any of my patients or anyone listening to say that, it does take time. It's taken me a lot of time. I've evolved and learned a lot. And I put myself through so many tests. I'm my own guinea pig. So I've tried multiple ways of eating, styles of eating, different ways to prepare food. I like the challenge and the test. And so that's just makes me be able to become a little closer to that normal Joe, that I can maybe try to connect with them on a more in-depth personal approach versus, the way that I look at things, I recognize are not the way that everybody else does.
So do you have that food that's just, all that temptation that's there, that one food you're like, oh, this is my cheat food?
Yeah, I would say for sure I do. I mean, like from a savory perspective, French fries are ultimately my
It's hard to say no to
favorite.
them. There's just something about them.
So good. And then, from a sweet side, I just love chocolate. So I love anything that's chocolate, like a flourless chocolate torte is like one of my favorites, something nice and rich and heavy, but you don't need a lot. But I kind of try to indulge in those like on a regular basis because I don't like the thought of deprivation for anyone. So, I have a piece of dark chocolate almost every day. So I don't ever feel like I'm deprived or I need to crave something because I allow myself it every day. I don't eat French fries every day, but I do allow myself to have French fries when I want, or I make these roasted potatoes that in my eyes just kind of fulfill that need. So I introduce things that I want and regularly crave. I try to make them more healthy versions. Yes, I have the unhealthy versions on occasion, but the fact that I get them more regularly and a healthy version allows me to not feel like I need the unhealthy version that often.
Wow. Even when you talk about your cheat foods, they somehow seem healthy. So you turn French fries into somehow roasted potatoes and your sweet treat into dark chocolate. So but I guess that's a mindset that you start to build where, food is good and you can find the joys and the things that are also good for you. It's not healthy stuff is and all the bad stuff tastes great. It's the healthy stuff tastes great too. And you have to kind of embrace that.
I completely agree. I do. I think it's a mindset. I think just like anything else, like running a marathon is a mindset. Most of our bodies can sustain it. Of course, we're worried about if we can run it, but really, if our mind's telling us we can't do it, we could be in the most pristine shape, but we may not ever be able to complete that because our mind is inhibiting us from doing it. So it's really a mindset. It's really just being able to look at nutrition in a different way, look at food in a different way, look at food as something that nourishes us, that provides us health, that provides us, just so much nutrition to help us become the best version of ourselves. So I do think it's switching that a little bit.
So as a dietitian, I'd imagine anytime you're out, you're at a party or something like that, you are getting questions from people, whether they're holding up something they're eating, asking if it's healthy, or going over what their meal plan is. What are the most common questions that you get, or even some of the funniest ones?
Sure. So I often have very random people just telling me what they're eating all day. So they'll like go through their whole day and tell me about
a confession.
And I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to be commenting, encouraging. So I kind of just nod and I'm like, good job. I'm just, I'm not on the clock right now. So I'm gonna not, but I will take any opportunity if they ask. I love when people want to know more. So I'm definitely there to ask questions, but I answer questions. I do tend to kind of stay within my lane because I think food, in a personal and social setting, people are like, oh no, here's the dietitian, hide my plate. And, a lot of times my answer is like, I really don't care what's on your plate. Like, I'm proud of whatever you put on that plate because it makes you happy and that's what you want. And that's what I'd want for you. So trust me, I'm not nutritionally analyzing your plate. I'm not judging what you're doing. I just want you to be happy and enjoy food. If you would like some information from me, I'm happy to answer any questions. But, I don't like to be known as the food police. I really don't like that analogy.
So at a party, maybe people aren't looking for that sort of detailed information. No. But let's go now. If somebody comes in, they make an appointment, they're going to come visit you because they want to go to a registered dietitian and get their diet in order. What's a visit to a dietitian like?
So in general, in an outpatient setting where that's the the setting that I work in. There's an inpatient setting, which you're in the hospital. That looks very different than an outpatient setting. But in an outpatient setting, we usually, whether it's virtual or in person, start off with a lot of basic like demographic information, as well as kind of an assessment. So I start off with a full assessment. I'm looking at height, weight, I look at exercise. I ask a lot of questions about activity. I'll ask questions about sleep. And then I'll get a full diet history. So the diet history, depending on how much the person wants to share, might look like exactly what they were eating or what they typically eat. Or it might look, if they're not really into sharing, or they're just, a lot of people can't recall what they eat because they don't really put that much thought into it. So like, I don't even know what I eat. I can't even remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, or I don't even know. I just eat what's around. And those are the hardest for me. So I tend to just ask, well, how often do you eat out? Or how often do you eat red meat? Or how often do you eat cheese? Or like, I'll kind of pinpoint foods and ask how often or what kinds of those foods they eat. To get a little bit more of an understanding. I think the assessment piece is key because it tells me where they're at that moment. So I'm not going to suggest a plan that's completely opposite of what they're eating. I think that's also a misconception. They're like, oh no, here we go. You're going to tell me I can't eat anything. I'm like, that's actually the opposite of what I'm going to do here. But I don't want to be restrictive. Most dietitians are trying to enhance people's nutrition. So they're not trying to take away, we're trying to add. So that piece is key for me, is to look at like kind of a full picture of where they're coming from. And then I also assess like what their readiness to change is. So I'm also trying to see, well, like, what changes have you made? What has worked for you? Where are you at? What are you looking to change or accomplish? And then I base my plan on all of those facets. And if it's, like a busy mom like myself, I might just focus on a couple main points that I see will make a big influence. Or if it's maybe, a retired male that just had heart surgery, I might, and that, has a little more time, I might focus on education with he and his wife on how to kind of change their cooking and change their meal prep and planning and snacks. So it really just depends on where they're coming from.
How far back do you go in somebody's life to kind of figure out kind of where they develop their eating pattern and their habits?
It really depends on what they're seeing me for, as to how far back I go. If we're looking at weight management and someone who's really struggled with their weight, I'll look back pretty far just to kind of see what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they've tried, what their struggles, pitfalls are. If it's someone that's like a, post-operative cardiac patient, then I'll probably look more at like, what we've done in the past. I'll have an idea and still try to incorporate some of the things that they did in the past, but just kind of try to build and improve on choices versus changing everything. And then of course I would focus post-operatively on like nutrient density, because they're still kind of after surgery, healing, etc. So it's all very dependent on why I'm seeing them.
I was going to say, is there such a thing as a typical patient, or is kind of everybody unique and you see people from the very young to very old?
Yeah, so I do focus on adults. I do not see children. There is a specific pediatric nutrition department that they see kids. So I am seeing, anyone 18, 20, and then older. I would say that in my clinic and in my department, since it is so specialized, I am seeing, people within their, 40s to 80s. I'm kind of spanning in that lifespan, that era of their life. So, there is not a typical patient because there's not a typical person. I mean, we're all so different. We eat differently. We wake and sleep differently. We exercise. We have different jobs. We have different upbringings that have influenced our, ideas and habits around eating. So I don't think there's anything typical. I would say that there's, kind of typical criteria, like you may have a patient that's pretty well versed in nutrition, but they kind of get in these like traps of these cyclical traps of some bad choices or bad habits. And then it's just kind of helping them break through those traps. But they have the core information and knowledge. They know a lot. So it's just a matter of working with their behaviors. Or then you have patients that really have not been exposed to a lot of nutrition information. They or didn't seek it out on their own, and never had to worry about it or never thought about it. And now all of a sudden they had a very scary event and they're ready to upload and change everything. So it's very variable based on what brought them there.
Do you find most people are really kind of willing to make those changes? It's healthy eating is, you always talk about like it's hard, but in reality, I mean, it feels like it's not. I mean, we all kind of know what's healthy and what's good. I mean, we can look at broccoli and go, this is probably something that should be on my plate a little more, as opposed to, a piece of pie.
Yeah. So I think, that's where I assess that readiness to change. So I think some people are more ready to change than others. And then I would base my plan on that. I think some people are really very motivated to do anything they can to improve their health, anything. I tell them to do it, they'll do it. But they've already changed their mindset, kind of back to that mindset piece. And then there's some that, they may have been referred by their doctor. They're not sure why they're there. They didn't really request seeing a dietitian. I tend to back off on those patients and just like pinpoint a couple small changes that will make a positive impact on their health.
Well, and you always do emphasize that, which is one of the things I love about the advice you give. And it's always, you make these small incremental changes and adjust. Maybe you don't have to overturn your entire diet in a day, but if you fix a thing or two a week, or make one or two substitutions over time, that makes a huge difference.
It does make a difference. Plus, when you're slowly making substitutions, instead of uploading everything, it doesn't feel so drastic. And then you'll find that like these substitutions aren't so bad, and you'll find that may start to enjoy them. And then you'll get a little more appreciation for healthy foods. And then that appreciation hopefully will spill into like meals and drinks and other parts of your day. So some people work better with small changes. Some people do work better with, big drastic changes. That's where that assessment piece is really key.
And you know what I find too, and I'm at that age where I've started making some dietary adjustments because, I'm of that age. And when you start eating better, if you regress and you have a night where maybe you eat something that's not so good for you, you feel like garbage the next day. And you kind of start to realize what food does to your system. And if you put the wrong fuel in, your system just doesn't really like it.
I completely agree. I do think, whether it's, as you're, aging and maybe some food you can't handle as well, or, you have a health condition that causes you to maybe retain fluid or be more inflamed, or, whatever the case might be, there are certain foods that can trigger some negative responses in the body. And once we pinpoint what those foods are and what the trigger is, and, manage them or control them, you start to feel better. And I think that's everyone's biggest motivation. That is always my goal, is to get someone to feel better, because then that's what will drive their motivation to continue to change and make changes and come back for a follow-up visit.
Well, I hear your voice all the time when I'm making those little decisions. And, like you said, you don't maybe deny yourself some treats or things you really enjoy, but you make sure to do them a little more in moderation. And if you do like a baked good, or I've got a baked good problem. As anyone who's listened to the show knows, I have a big baked good problem. But it's like you have certain times where you have them, or certain instances, but you don't just make it a regular everyday sort of thing.
Right. I like to work into like special occasions or treats. I don't like to use food as a reward, because I don't think we should get in that trap of like, you did good, you reward yourself with food. I like to make it more of like just a tradition. Like every Sunday is when I get my baked good. Or like every Friday is, maybe when I get my one drink a week, or whatever we or you decide on as being reasonable. But I think it's not necessarily a reward, but like a celebration. Make foods that you enjoy more celebratory versus something you have every day. And then you'll create much more value. The hope is that you create more mindfulness around eating them. So you'll slow down, you'll enjoy, you'll savor. I mean, when I watch my daughter eat something sweet, she slowly eats one little bite at a time, and she takes all her time, and she loves every moment of it. And I'm like, man, we should all do that, and then we'll enjoy and savor it. And we don't feel like we have to scarf something down because we're never going to get it again.
Yeah, unfortunately, I look like those dogs in those Facebook reels. Yeah. I think I put them down like nothing.
I eat fast too. I'm like, slow down.
So how do you go about working with somebody to create kind of like their personalized eating plan?
Sure. So I do that assessment piece, and then based on their labs or what they're there for, what their health goals are, I try to make suggestions. So I may give a meal plan. A meal plan might look like a calorie controlled plan, which targets a certain amount of carbs, proteins, fats. Someone who's a little bit more number oriented, detail oriented, wants to write things down, wants to track, is where I'd go the meal plan route. I may educate on a certain diet or plan, such as the Mediterranean diet. I may try to infiltrate that within their day, give them easy, healthy swaps to try to get more Mediterranean style foods in and pull out some of the foods that aren't serving them as well. I may recommend like a restriction, like a sodium restricted diet. Being in cardiology, I do that a lot. So I try to educate on the effects of sodium and how to limit sodium. And then obviously things I've always add. So trying to add potassium rich foods because potassium helps offset sodium. So I just try to see like what they're there for and then kind of develop a reasonable plan to meet their health goals.
What are the biggest hurdles that most people face as they start trying to make these adjustments and changes?
I'd say if they didn't plan ahead, so, kind of going blindsided and trying to make the change in the moment, at the exact moment, versus planning ahead. So I try to educate people on like, you have to, fill your cupboards with the foods you can eat, fill your fridge with the foods you can eat, start to take out the foods that you're consuming that, shouldn't be there on a regular basis. Start to educate yourself. I think education is key. Reading labels, reading ingredient lists, being more aware of how you react to foods, how you feel when you eat a certain meal. Like I'll ask people all the time, well, I messed up. I had fast food. I'm like, well, you didn't mess up. You just had a meal that may be not ideal for you, but how did you feel after you ate it? So just kind of recognizing how you feel after you eat and then kind of taking note of that, because that's where, again, some of that change occurs. Like you said, sometimes when you're having things that you're used to be able to eat and get away with, or, have no side effects from, now you're eating them and you're like, oh, I don't feel so great. So I like to pinpoint that for people and recognize that and say, okay, what can we do next time to prevent us from grabbing fast food? What can we have available that's quick and easy, just as easy, will take just as much time as going through the drive-through, but you're not going to have that negative feeling after it, or you're not going to negatively impact your health.
Yeah. And so much of that is the planning. And it goes to the importance of when you go to the grocery store, you're going there with a plan. I still love the advice you give where you say, shop the perimeter. And that's where you get all your fresh foods, your whole foods. And if your diet's based on that, your odds are you're going to be in a much better spot than if you're just hitting all the heavily processed stuff that's in those middle aisles.
Definitely. We want to fill our cart with as much produce as possible. So you want to think about how many, fruits and vegetables you can have. I always try to rotate stocks. So I think of things that are going to go bad quickly. I start with maybe the berries and grapes, and then I always grab some fruit that I know will last a week or two. So like some oranges and grapefruit and even apples. So we grab, a good variety of stuff. So we always, we don't have any excuse not to eat enough produce because it's there. We don't want to waste it. We don't want to throw it away. I feel like that's people's issues. They're always like, I'm going to waste it. I'm like, well, just eat it and you won't waste it. If you just put it out every day and you eat it at every meal, like you won't waste it. I promise you. And if you rotate stock and think about it and plan it a little ahead, you'll be able to keep it going. And, a quick tip too is if you do feel like, you can't get to the produce, especially the veggies, making a big pot of soup is super easy with anything that's, you kind of see going bad. And then you could always freeze that soup. Making smoothies, so grabbing them before they get bad and putting them in Ziploc bags and freezing them to throw into smoothies are another great way. And that could be fruits or vegetables. So just a little thought process, a little bit ahead. For me, we have a bunny. So I give all my scraps, all my bad stuff to the bunny. So it gets used completely. But I will, throw some bananas in the freezer if they see they're going bad, or, whatever greens I'll throw in the freezer and keep it for a smoothie or soup, or, whatever I end up using it for later in the day or the week.
I have to say, get a bunny may have been the most unexpected tip I expected out of today. I mean, I did not see that one coming.
We used to have a bunny and a guinea pig. The poor guinea pig just passed, but yeah, they would eat a ton. Our bunny is very fat, and it's mainly for fruits and vegetables.
Well, aside from getting a rabbit to take care of the produce that's near the end of its life, what are some of the other top tips you give people, just kind of to stay motivated to eat healthier?
I think I tend to tell people to kind of take it one step at a time, because I think people have this long-term vision or goal of like, I want to lose 50 pounds. And I'm like, that's a wonderful goal. I will be here to support that goal, forever. But let's take it one step at a time. Let's try to, make small changes to incorporate, losing about 1 pound or 2 pounds a week. And let's do, 4 to 8 pounds in a month versus looking at 50 pounds. Because I think when you look at 50 pounds and you look at how daunting that is and how much you feel inside, drastic changes need to happen for that to occur, then most people are like, forget it. It's too much work. I can't even do that. I can't even fathom that. That's way too much. So if you just take it a small step at a time, it just seems so much more reasonable, doable, attainable. We don't want to upload anyone's life. We're trying to make small, reasonable changes that will create a positive impact. And I can't say enough about, I talk a lot about this in the meal on the podcast, but the composition of your meals. So being able to have balanced meals is really key for you to feel the best you can, meaning you manage your blood sugar, you manage your appetite, you have adequate amount of nutrients that you need. So if we're not adequately balancing our meals, we're going to be left hungry, searching, and that's when most people get into trouble. So it's just planning well-balanced meals, having them, properly timed based on your schedule, your needs, your desires, and what you decide, but trying to stick to a somewhat of a schedule and somewhat of that balance will keep you more on track.
Yeah. And you talk about what to put on your plate, like how to visualize your plate. And I think it's like half fruit and vegetables, or half vegetables, quarter protein. And then the other quarter
carbohydrate.
Carbos. Yeah.
Yep. Complex carbs.
Yeah. And that's a nice way to kind of break it down, because I think most people can kind of visualize that. And, I don't think a lot of us fill half of our plates with veggies.
Right. I think most of us don't. And as I mentioned, when I meal plan for the week or just grocery shop, I have that image in mind. So I'm always like, well, what's going to be my carb? What's going to be my protein? What's going to be my veggies? And do I have to have enough of those, right? So just make sure we have plenty. And then I kind of just serve that balance every time. And I feel like that will help the fiber in the fruits and vegetables, the fiber in the grains that fills us up. The protein sustains your appetite, helps with, building muscle. Fat is kind of that sealer. It seals the deal. It makes the food taste good. It kind of makes you feel like you had something, that's filling, sustainable. Fat takes the longest for us to digest. So it's keeping us more sustained, like an hour and a half after a meal. So there's that balance, and including all of those macronutrients is so essential.
Yeah. I know when we talk too, there's such a big mental side to how we eat, I think all of us struggle with weight a little bit.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to feel like you're part psychologist in addition to being a dietitian. I mean, how do you help people kind of get over those hurdles?
Yeah, that's so true. My dietitian colleagues and I always say that, we are definitely part psychologists or
You have
social
to be,
workers.
because
Yeah.
we all struggle with that.
And it's a true struggle, and it's a justifiable struggle. I mean, our society puts a lot of influence on body image and weight and nutrition, and more now than ever. So there's so much conflicting information. You're looking online at people who do not look humanly. Some people can't humanly possibly look like that, right? A lot
Yeah.
of images are altered, and we have so much technology and even cosmetics that can make people enhance their look so much that we try to strive for this image it's not even real. So I think that it's kind of coming back to understanding what your health goals are, what you want to accomplish, and try to really limit outside influences as much as possible. Staying positive, I think, is important. Celebrating milestones, even small ones, like, hey, I went a week and I had a vegetable every day. Like, that's huge. That's awesome. Like, let's celebrate that. Let's be happy about that. That's a big step. And I think as you change your mindset around it and create more positive around what you're doing, because any change you're doing from a nutrition perspective, you're making a positive change. You're improving your health. You're improving your health outcomes, your longevity, your mortality. It's all improving. Your sleep, your skin, your inflammation, your joints, all of it is being improved by every little food you put in your mouth. So any little change is going, especially if you create a habit out of it, will really create a huge impact in the end.
Just listening to you talk, it's very coach speak, and I do feel like a dietitian is like a nutrition coach for people. So if you're looking for that, if you want this extra, coaching, you want to be coached up to eat better, how do you go about establishing a relationship with a registered dietitian? Getting an appointment. Do you need a prescription? Do you need to be referred to one? What's the process?
Sure. So most dietitians do not need a referral. So usually you can call up any dietitian and make an appointment with he or her, although some insurances require referrals. So it's just based on what your insurance requires. So a good place to start is your primary care physician or, whatever practitioner you see on a regular basis, and ask them for, a referral to see a dietitian. You can also, ask friends or family members. That's a great way to find someone in your area that someone's worked with and had success with. That's also, word of mouth is great. The only issue there is like this insurance piece, right? So if you're using insurance, we got to make sure we find someone that's covered within our plan.
Right.
So that's the one piece. If you're really concerned about nutrition coverage, I would go straight to your insurance company and say, can you tell me what dietitians are within my network? And what do I have as an option for nutrition counseling? Do I have a certain amount of hours or, allotted money? Is there a copay? Kind of start to figure that out with your insurance company too, if that's a big concern for you. But there, really there's the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. The website's eatright.org. They have a database of dietitians, nationwide. So you can kind of search your zip code and find dietitians in your area. And again, that's a great list. We just have to take that a step further if you do want to check insurance coverage.
And we should add here that the podcast, of course, is free and so therefore covered by all insurances. So you can also get great advice here.
Free information.
So, which is why we're here every week.
Absolutely.
Well, we've covered a lot here, as we always do. And this has been fabulous just to get to know you a little bit better, and just kind of everything that kind of drives you. So as we've been doing this, and Julia, you and I have been doing these podcasts now for a couple of years, which is hard to believe. You know, why? I say, why do you do this? Why are you so passionate about sharing, this information just to help people make better decisions for, their health?
Well, as I have had 20 years of patient care, I noticed that, we can reach the patients that are accessible to us and the people that are accessible to us. But really, everyone needs to know this information. So to me, I just wanted to spread this information to anyone and everyone who can access it, who wants to hear it, who seeks it out for free, no strings attached. And then, I love to empower people to make decisions and make change on their own. Of course, seeing a dietitian is great. I'm all for seeing a dietitian, but you can take one step at a time and educate yourself and empower yourself to make change through the food you put in your mouth. And it really will make a huge impact in the end. So I'd love to see people take their own health in their own hands, take ownership of it, educate yourselves, and make small changes that will positively impact your health.
Well, thank you for all you do. And I know, and I've told you this all the time, you have helped me, I know. And I think about all the things we talk about whenever I go to the grocery store, wherever I'm in the kitchen. And it does make a difference. So, change comes one person at a time. And thanks for, helping us spread the message.
Thank you so much.
So Julia, I got to say, it was, it felt a little weird having you just as like a guest, because you're just like the co-host I always have here with me. But that was fabulous, just getting to know you a little more and really hearing all your stories.
I agree. It was a little odd being the actual guest, being the host, but I loved it. I love to share, my personal story as well as, where my passion comes from. And, just knowing that it's an ever evolving field and an ever evolving journey towards overall health.
Well, and that is why we're here. And I think you make it so easy to kind of look at eating and nutrition and go, how can I use this information to make my life just a little bit better and maybe live a little bit healthier?
Completely agree. It's all about just gaining more information, just learning more, and then applying what you learn to your life and what you think will resonate and work for you.
Well, that's what the podcast is all about. So if you liked what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment to share your thoughts. And until next time, eat well.